I'm getting ready to leave the beautiful Cape Town, South Africa in a few hours, but if you are planning a trip to South Africa, specifically to Cape Town, here are a few things you should keep in mind. In this video, we'll talk about them. Hey girl, hey, my name is Tanisha Mercer. I help Black women solo travel and move abroad. If any of that sounds like you, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button or the subscribe bell. That way you don't miss any of the content updates here. So let's talk about it. I am wrapping up a beautiful trip to South Africa. I am on my way to the airport in a couple of hours. We leave this afternoon, but I thought about it. If you are planning a trip to Cape Town, or to South Africa, what things do you want to keep in mind? Number one, in your planning process. Number one, you want to keep in mind that you probably will need some shots or booster shots. You should check with your specific like public health department or area where you can get shots. I know for me, as like an almost 50-year-old Black woman, right, who doesn't have access to my shot records, I had to get hepatitis A. It's also recommended that you get yellow fever shots. Although living in Paris, they did not have they did not have any yellow fever. So you keep that in mind. Also typhoid. So typhoid, yellow fever, hepatitis A, or a booster if you need one, whatever you may need, and also that malaria prescription. So one of the things is that in South Africa, depending upon where you go, if you're going to some of the mountainous areas, those areas are more prone to malaria. So I came here with a prescription for malaria medication. It's something that you need to take every single, like a day before you leave, every single day of your trip, and I believe like 7 to 10 days after you leave. And I want to say maybe it's like a week. I need to read the prescription to be sure, but I am still on the medication. You will need to take the medication after you return back to wherever you're going, right? But all areas of South Africa are not prone to malaria, but when you're in those mountainous areas, if you're doing any safaris, those are typically a couple hours away from Cape Town. You know, it's a whole different thing, whole different ball game going on. So you are going to need that malaria medication. So add that to your trip planning process. Also remember that the currency here is the rand, the South African rand. I don't know if it's rand or rand. I think it's rand. The rand. It is a pretty good conversion. What I will say is that be prepared for some lower prices. Now again, remember you'll have to deal with the conversion of your own particular, wherever your home currency is. But even with that in mind, things are relatively cheap. We have gotten drinks, we have gotten meals, great meals at great restaurants for honestly like $15, $20. The way that I'm looking at it is I think 100 Rand is equal to about 5 USD. And so most at nice sit-down restaurants, like not anything like bars or anything like that, like dive bars. Nice restaurants, you can get a pretty good meal for about 15 to 20 Rand. Drinks relatively cheap, about 7 Rand or so. Maybe 70, I'm sorry, not 70 or so Rand. Alcohol, things are definitely cheaper. I have loved the restaurants here. I've had some really good food. The food has been prepared excellently. The prices are amazing. Listen, I'm definitely coming back on the food alone. I just was really shocked at how relatively cheap everything is. And I don't know if that's because I'm coming, last week we were in Zurich, Switzerland, where everything was high as giraffe eyelashes, okay? I don't know if that's what I'm having the price mix up or whatever, where everything, literally a meal could cost you, dinner out could cost you anywhere from 60 to 100 euro, right? Euros. So whereas here you can eat off that for days. And I mean, I gave an example in a recent video. I'll link it in here alive. I got 3 large coffees, and they were all together, they were 5 Rand. That is amazing when you consider that if you're going to, and this was at a nice restaurant, a nice breakfast spot that's next to our condo. And again, nice spot, nice sit down, $5 for 3 coffees. It just blew my mind because you can pay that for just one, right? So five Rand. So really great prices. Prepare to save some money, right? Save some money because you will eat well and you won't spend a lot. Tipping wise, there is tipping is not expected, is not required here, but it is nice to leave a 10% tip. Your servers may ask you to, they may, you may see the option to leave a tip. The service that we have received here has been absolutely great. No rushing, you're allowed to eat your meal. They, in terms of very helpful. It definitely reminded me a lot of French culture in terms of dining in Paris, right? They're leaving, they give you your food, leave you alone, they check on you, but it's not this thing of constantly bugging you, trying to turn the table or anything like that. So keep that in mind when it comes to dining out. 10% is customary. It is not required. It is also suggested that you tip your tour driver, your Uber driver, and look up the tipping on that because it varies. I was told, like with Uber, what I read it with Uber is that, just kind of top it up. So if it's 5, 12, top it up to 6. You have to do what you feel comfortable with, but definitely educate yourself on the tipping stuff because that was one thing that I did not do that my daughter was showing me that I wish that I had done. And but your tour driver is a big one because, for example, if you're doing a safari tour, that person is driving you around and may expect a tip, right? So just remember to look those small details up. It's one of those educational experiences because in the US, tipping is one thing, and when you go other places, tipping is often something else. The other thing is to keep in mind is to be aware of in terms of when you're traveling and the climate here. We're here obviously in September, early September. It is spring. Summer will be here soon, but it is still relatively cool. Like if you go outside right now, you definitely need a jacket on. I'm in the house, but there have been some nights where definitely I turned the heat on in this unit because it got a little chilly. So remember, if you're out doing stuff early morning, late evening, you are probably gonna have to dress in layers. Right now, people are literally wearing coats. I've seen coats and boots. So if you're planning, for example, some excursions and you're going to be on the ocean and you're doing like a catamaran, we did a catamaran cruise. Luckily, it was one of the warmer days, but if it gets cold, you may not want to be on the ocean. When it gets cold, you may not really want to be in the mountains. Dress accordingly. So dress in layers, have some coats and things like that that you can be able to kind of take on and take off. Yes, it does warm up in the middle of the day, but again, it can get quite cold. And to have the optimal experience, especially if you're out here doing stuff, right? Dress for the climate, figure out what type of climate it is. If it's summertime, you're not gonna have no problems. It's gonna be hot, super hot. So keep that in mind in terms of even in your planning process. To me, this is a perfect time to go because it's not too hot, it's not too cold. I would much rather add a jacket or add some layers than have to deal with scorching hot temperatures. So just remember, just because you're in Africa, you are in the southern part of Africa and the southern part of the continent. And so the weather patterns vary. Just last week, I was told that there was snow and there are so many mountains here. Tabletop Mountain is probably the more famous one, but there are, I saw many mountains here and with all different names. So just remember you are in that type of climate, and as we know, when you go to higher elevation, the temperature can change. So be ready for that, be prepared for that, for potential weather changes. What else? Uber. I mentioned Uber earlier, but Uber is really inexpensive here. I was definitely blown away about how cheap it can be to rent an Uber. Now, if you're getting around town, I feel like some people like when they travel, they love to rent a car. I don't like to do that. Listen, they drive on the different side of the street here. The steering wheel is on the passenger side of the car, not the driver's side in terms of a U.S. vehicle. So if you're in a car, right, this is your car, the steering wheel is going to be on this side and not this side as we would in terms of in America. So unless you are used to doing that and you have no problem renting, there are many car rental places that you can rent from here. Again, I'm not a fan of renting in foreign countries because I don't know the driving laws. Everything is different. Me personally, I feel like I definitely would turn on the wrong side of the road. I would do something wrong. And it's better for me overall so that I don't get a toe tag and don't give nobody else a toe tag that I not drive. Okay, so for me, like driving in the UK, no. Driving here, no. You can rent an Uber. You can get an Uber. We use Uber. I don't know if they have Lyft here, but taxis are also common. Uber, I like Uber because of the pricing. The price is the price, right? The price is the price. So Ubers are relatively cheap. We have gone, man, remember the safaris are going to be about a couple hours away. If you want to go to any of the wineries, that's about an hour away from Cape Town. So a lot of things are, and we stayed in the Central Business District. So if you want to do all the activities, you're gonna pay. You're gonna have to get an Uber. I think we had an Uber yesterday to. We went to Stellenbosch, the winery. That Uber was, what was it? Maybe 500 rand, which is that's like what, $25 USD, and really good pricing. Can't beat it. Just a lot lower. And when you travel, you see how Uber is so cheap in other places. It reminds me a lot of Colombia, where in Colombia an Uber is like $2 or $3 comparatively, right? $2 or $3 US. So relatively cheap. You can go many places here, not pay a lot of money. If I'm going 2 hours, when I think about I'm going 2 hours away, how much that Uber would cost me in the US, and I still think of US pricing. So it would cost a whole lot of money for me to go take an Uber, for example, from Atlanta, from where I live, to say like 2 hours away is like perhaps the Georgia mountains, right? 2 hours away is going to be a bit far. And I just think of how much that Uber would be, and it would be scary money, right? Even if you're traveling in Atlanta, man, going from the airport to suburban Atlanta where I lived, which was like, what, 45 minutes away from the airport or so, 40 minutes away from the airport, man, they have tried to charge as much as $100, $125, as much on Uber. So that gives you a good price breakdown. Ubers are incredibly cheap and inexpensive. The next thing is just be a little wary and careful when you're moving around Cape Town. There are different areas. It's just like any other place, any other cities. You have your good and your bad areas. Near the Central Business District, there is a Skid Row area where unfortunately there are unhoused people. So that doesn't mean that you are going to be more susceptible, but it does help when you are moving around, and especially as a woman traveler. I am aware I'm keenly aware, and you have to be keenly aware when you are traveling in other places. So for me, and this is just for me only, if it's getting dark, we're gonna hop in an Uber. I'm not gonna be walking around as much, right? So just remember that, being aware of your surroundings, no matter where you are. This is a major city, and I say that in most major cities, you do have to be, I don't care where it is, whether it's Paris, New York, Milan, Rome, you have to be aware if you are in a major city area. We did have an incident coming into Cape Town that was rather unfortunate at the airport. And I mentioned this in a video some days back, but we were coming into the airport and we were waiting for my daughter. My daughter took a different flight. Okay, her flight arrangements were different than myself and my niece. And we were waiting for her, waiting for baggage claim, and a woman came over, had a uniform on. Now, she did work for the airport, and she was being very helpful, saying she was asking us about the bags and if we found them, and she was asking me. And so what happened is my niece had gone to customs first, and I told her to go ahead and go through customs. I needed to make a bathroom run. So I did that, and as I came back, there were all these people that were in customs. So she got out well ahead of me. So when I came through the baggage claim area, I didn't see her. And I'm calling her, but she'd actually went to the bathroom and had grabbed our bags. But I didn't know that. She had sent me messages, but I didn't get them, with the Wi-Fi or whatever. So long story short, or short story long, whatever you want to call it, the woman, my niece came, saw she had the bags, and the woman was saying she would escort us. And I had said, oh, do you escort? Because I'm not used to baggage claim folks doing anything. Like, I think about it. Atlanta airport, it's all, listen, it's a free-for-all in terms of the luggage. You want to get your luggage as soon as possible because there is hardly anyone monitoring that whole situation. So I thought, well, maybe it's different in South Africa. Okay, South Africa. So she's proceeding to walk us out, and we had our own bags, and she's walking us out and telling us that she would escort us and she would walk us out. Remember, keep in mind, she had the whole uniform on. She was an airport employee. I looked at it, and she was making small talk, like, okay, where you from? Well, blah, 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 blah. Telling me like, oh, I like you wear a lot of jewelry. I like your jewelry. And so as we get further to the taxi waiting area, this man comes up, and this man says, now by this time my daughter had joined us. And so she's walking all of us now by this point, right? So he says, well, what hotel are you staying at? And we tell him, and this person had on a taxi uniform, and he said, well, who did you book through? And we were like, well, booking.com. And he said, well, let me check with the hotel because I think I see on here, something about 400, and you may have to settle an additional tab. And we looked because everything was paid online. So what additional tab are you talking about, sir? So as we look at him, then the woman tells me, I think you should pay me a tip. And I said, excuse me, ma'am? I think you should pay me a tip. She repeats herself. She says, I think I deserve a tip. And I'm just like, okay, hold on. I said, listen, I don't have any money on me, number one. Number two, you work here at the airport. There's nothing that you did that deserves a tip. And at that moment, we look and we see our driver from our Airbnb property that my daughter had arranged from, because initially we thought he was the driver, and we see him holding the sign. And so then we go to him, and their whole thing was just destroyed from that point because it was clear that it was some scammery going on. So keep your wits about you, right? Don't pay anything that you don't need to pay to anybody. Don't get in if you're coming in from the airport, do not get into a taxi that is not an official taxi. People come up to you, that's not an official taxi. All right, they pull the same thing at the Paris airport too, at CDG. You need to do an official taxi. So get in the official taxi line, book an official Uber or whatever taxi service, or pre-arrange it as we did, as my daughter did, but we kind of got a little messed up because we were thinking that this was the official taxi, and it wasn't. And that could have been just a mistake. Like, I don't know if dude was he could have told us, that it would be $1,000 or 1,000 rand, and we wouldn't have known. A taxi from the airport is about 30 minutes away. So it's not a huge amount of money. I don't know what dude was trying to pull, but just remember when you're traveling, especially for my Black women solo travelers out here, I don't care what city it is, you have to be very careful and cautious because people are really out here trying to take your money away from you, okay? So go through the official channels, right? Go through Uber. Know that pricing up front. When folks try to tell you, oh, it's gonna be a little bit more or whatever, no, you're going through the app. There's a reason why you're going through the app. Don't let folks do crazy things like they want you to cancel first because when you cancel, they get paid. There are all types of shenanigans. Sometimes these rideshare drivers will pay. I've had them do the same thing to me in other countries, right? Where they will purposely not pick you up, and then you cancel, they get paid. They will purposely not pick you up in the right location. Again, it's a ruse to try to get paid. They will purposely drop you off in the wrong location or take an alternate route that will be more. So I've had all these things happen. So always, always, always be careful when you are traveling. Have your safety wits about you. Again, don't flash a lot of cash. Keep your valuables close to you. Phones, wallets, identification. All of that good stuff. Now, overall, as I mentioned, South Africa, Cape Town specifically, was a great place to visit. I cannot speak enough about this particular trip. I am ready to plan a second trip here. I'm ready to do the things that we didn't get a chance to do. Yesterday, we did the winery. That took a long time. We had a lot of wine. And we didn't get a chance to do the Nelson Mandela Museum. It closed early. Unfortunately, it closed at 4 o'clock. and we were like an hour away at Stellenbosch. So we couldn't do that. We couldn't make it in enough time. So we didn't get a chance to do the Nelson Mandela Museum. Also, near the Victoria Wharf, there is Robbins Island. And I want to say, I don't remember if it's Robbins or Robin. So excuse me if it's incorrect. But it is the area where Nelson Mandela was jailed, and that's a whole tour area. I will say, to me, I think it's important to patronize Black South African restaurants and Black South African merchants that are here. There are a lot of different things in the mall area. I noticed there are a lot of different, we would call it probably appropriation, right? We would definitely call it appropriation. And so you see a lot of that in the malls, in the shopping areas. I made it a point to specifically seek out some of the merchants that were around the mountain areas that we went to. We went to a mountain a few days ago. We went to when we went to go see the penguins, the African penguins, at the Boulder Creek area, the Boulder Creek Mountain or Boulder Creek Beach. There were some merchant that had she had jewelry for sale, she had clothing for sale. I made it a point to patronize her business because I want to make sure that the people who are producing, who this is their own culturally, are benefiting from this. We know that South Africa is still dealing with the vestiges of apartheid, just as the US is still dealing with the vestiges of segregation, white supremacy, Jim Crow, all that good stuff. They're still dealing with that here. So it is something to keep in mind to go, this is how I am. I try to tip my Uber driver who looks like me a little bit more. I try to patronize Black South Africaners. I'm coming at it from the perspective of a Black American in these travel spaces, and I like to support people who look like me in terms of in the country that they are in, and that's no matter what country I'm in. If you're Black in Colombia, I'm patronizing you. If you are, I'm throwing a little bit extra, okay? If you're Black in America, I'm throwing a little bit extra. That is my personal opinion. I'm not going to argue with this in the comments or anything else, but that is what I do personally. You have to do what speaks to you, but just know that you're going to see a lot of cultural items that are going to be made by people who may be South African, they may be South African, but they are not melanated South Africans, if that makes sense to you. So you will see all of that here. Just remember, there are so many things: beaches, mountains, ocean, the ocean, Cape Point. We didn't get a chance to do Cape Point, where the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean meet, but this is, again, definitely been an experience. There's all kind of stuff: zip lining, trams, multiple wineries, multiple private game reserves for safaris, so many activities, so many restaurants, so many malls, all within walking distance. There's a lot of shopping around here. So everything from your traditional malls to your more street vendors, it's all here. You can go more into the townships if you want. There are tours of Cape townships. There are so many tour operators and things to do here. So enjoy your time. If you are coming into Cape Town, it is going to be a wonderful trip. I enjoyed my time here. This is a favorite place of mine. I'm actively looking at when can I go back, when can I come back, because man, I've just enjoyed myself immensely. Enjoyed the food, the people, the culture. Really do love it all. If you've reached the end of this video and have not subscribed, sis, I don't know what you're doing. Subscribe, that way you get all the updates here. Don't forget to share, like, and comment on this video. All right, you guys, I'm off to the airport. We are off to the airport, ending this beautiful place, ending this beautiful trip in this beautiful place. Have a great rest of your day. I will talk to you later.